Welcome to Ephemera Files by Tommy, and I am trying something new. I am taking part in a scavenger hunt challenge that is hosted by, her name is Janet, and I will link her below. I will link whatever information I have about her below. And what she has done is put together a list of 100 prompts. Take these prompts and you will create pages. And I've seen a few different people do this in a few different ways. And these are for art journal pages, but you might possibly able to use them in a junk journal or a Bible journaling page or lots of different things. I think that the object of this is to get your creative thoughts going and to make you think outside of your normal box. And I need to get out of my box a lot. So I have taken all of these prompts and I retyped them onto a separate sheet of paper. I will keep this for reference because as I use them, I will check them off because I think I lost one of my little pieces as I was putting this together. What I am going to do, since it has to, the deadline is April 1st, so it has to be done before then, I would like for you to play along with me. And I will have my eyes closed, but you're not going to see it. You can't tell I have my eyes closed, but trust me, I have them closed. And I am going to, okay, I'm going to open them. I'm going to find my bowl first. I'm going to randomly draw 3 of the prompts out. And we will see what is going on. There's 1, 2, and I got like 5 in my hand, and 3. And so I'll set this over to the side after I open my eyes so I don't drop it on the floor. Okay. Oh, goodness. All right. So my first one is a doozy. I am going to pause the video for a moment while I try to get some ideas going so you don't have to sit here and wait for me and sing the theme song to my favorite game show. Okay, I'm back. I am not sure this is exactly in the same place as it was before because I bumped it and moved it, but I think I have figured out what I'm going to do with this very odd assortment of the challenge words that I drew. You would think that on the first go out, maybe I would get something kind of simple. No. I had to do a lot of hunting around. I did actually find everything for this in my studio, so I didn't have to go hunting around the house for anything. So I'm going to put a piece of waxed paper behind this to protect the pages behind. I know the pages behind this are going to get messy at some point, but I'd rather they got messy on my terms. Although if they got messy, it wouldn't be an end of the world type thing, kind of thing. First thing I'm going to do is grab my gesso and use my scraper to add just a thin coat. I probably should have put an apron on, and now I have my apron on. So I'm going to take this card and just spread a thin layer of this white gesso. And this particular gesso is Liquitex Basics acrylic gesso, and it is white. But since my page is white and I'm just going to be building on top of it, I really don't need it to be clear. If I wanted to be able to see behind it, I would make sure and get clear gesso, and I would probably get, if I was going to use gesso, I would make sure and get one of the higher quality that doesn't have the grit that this one does. If I didn't want the grit, then I would get matte medium instead, or matte gel medium. Either one is fine. Now, because this layer is really thin, it should dry very quickly. I need to put a little bit more right there where I still have a uncovered spot. Oops, that was a little more than I meant to put on there. Okay, that's all right because I can scrape it back, and I can keep scraping until this puppy is dry. The friction and the air you keep introducing into it will help it to dry quicker so that I don't have to pull out my heat gun. If I really was in a time crunch, I would do that. I would not subject you to listening to it. Of course, for some people, this scritching may be getting on their nerves because I'm not a fan of the scritching myself. All right. I think I basically have it covered. It's not a solidly covered page by any means, but I think that I'm probably done with this card. But it's going to be good enough for what I want. So the three things that I chose were definition of an unknown word, and that one was fairly simple. I grabbed one of my really old dictionaries that I have all around here and just opened up to a page and looked for a word I didn't know. And I found one. And the word is crambo. It says cabbage. As in crambe repetita, cabbage repeatedly served, hence repeated story or an old tale. And then it says a game in which players find rhymes for words given by each other, or a rhyme or rhyming, contemptuous term for inferior poetry. So there we go. There's that. The tea bag or the envelope. I have my coffee and tea dyeing kit that I put together. I keep all of my things in here so that I don't have to store them elsewhere in the house. And this is an unused tea bag. And I think that I am not going to use it to get the color or to steep the tea. I'm going to use it in a different way for a background on here. And I will show you what I'm doing with that here in just a moment. For the tea bag tea envelope, I'm going to take my little bottle of water that I have here, and I am going to get the bag pretty wet. I'm not soaking it. I'm not trying to make tea over here. I just want it to give some color. And this is an herbal tea, so it's not exactly gonna be brown. Matter of fact, it's kind of red. It looks like I'm bleeding a little bit. I don't know if you can see that right there. And I am actually going to give myself a background with this tea bag. And I really did not expect that to be red. So now I have to kind of rethink what my intentions were for this page. I thought it was going to be brown, which worked very well with my favorite toy from childhood story that I'm going to share with you here shortly. But that's okay. It matches my shirt. Maybe there's a reason that I'm doing it. Maybe it's so I don't stain my shirt. But I am just giving myself a textured background using this tea bag. And I'm going to make sure that I don't really have a lot of white left. I want a little bit of white showing just so that there's a pattern, obviously, but I don't want big splotchy places that have just white. I think that looks good. I am going to let that dry, and then I will be back. Okay, so this is odd. As it dried, a lot of it turned blue, and that was unexpected as well. I'm not really sure what kind of tea that was. I'm going to have to look and see. So now that we've got the unexpected thrown in there a couple of times, because I expected it to be brown and it was pink, and it dried not pink but bluish purple, I now have to rethink just a little bit where I was going. And that will actually give me time to tell you about the third one, a favorite toy from childhood. I grew up, we didn't have much money at all. And my two sisters and I, one of our favorite things to do was Well, there were two favorite things. Um, we had a front porch that my dad handmade out of fieldstone. It wasn't level. It had a lot of ups and downs and dips, and it wasn't like you would expect today from a flat fieldstone patio. And the concrete grout lines between the rocks would be anywhere from an inch to 2 inches wide. We had these little metal cars, and they were just the pressed metal. They weren't even like Hot Wheels cars where the wheels are, plastic and everything is all fancy. These were just old metal cars. And we would choose one of the rocks that were in the patio or the porch, whichever you want to call it, to be our home. And we would find these tiny, tiny little pebbles, tiny little pebbles to represent our families. We'd have two bigger pebbles would be mom and dad, but they still had to fit into the car. Everybody had to fit in the car. And then however many children we thought we wanted. We had one rock that we pretended was a split level because the rock itself had like a half-inch drop, and this little set of divots over here that we pretended were stairs. And so it was a split level, and it was the house everybody wanted. And we would decorate our houses with little twigs and leaves. And we would do the same thing. We would go into the pine trees that were behind our house, and we would build little homes, and we would get mosses for rugs and pillows, and we would make blankets out of big leaves and beds out of twigs and stuff like that. So my favorite toy from childhood was not really a toy. It was more a bunch of things that you would find out in the woods, nature type things. So I knew that I had this yarn that was going to be put into a fairy journal, and it still will be. I'm not going to use all of it, but it reminds me very much of moss. So I'm going to add some of this to my page. This was also in the fairy journal box, and it's a bunch of ferns and mosses and ivies that have been made into a wreath, but it reminds me of what we did with our houses out in the woods. And then at first I got into my beads because I wanted to find some little tiny rocks to represent the rock families that we would have. And the rocks that we would use would even be smaller than that. The mom and dad rocks would be less than half that size. But you do what you do. I mean, we did what we did because you do what you do with what you've got. So I'm going to take 3 of these. They're actually beads, but I'm going to use them as rocks. And then, as I was digging through my scrap paper looking for a used tea bag, because I thought that I still had some and I didn't, I found these scraps, which also remind me of the little rocks. And they also remind me of the patio. So I am going to use all of these to represent the favorite toy from childhood. Right now, I am going to put this on fast forward. I will not skip what I'm doing so that you can see everything that I'm doing, but I don't want to make you deal with all of the waiting and everything else and me hemming and hawing, because right now my brain's not working. So here we go. so there it is, the basic part. I am going to put a quote on here that will tie all of this together. And when it is completely dry, I'll come back and show you the finished. Here it is, all finished, I think. It did not turn out like I thought it would when I was gathering my materials. Like I said, I didn't expect the pink of the tea bag. I expected brown, so I had dirt that would go along with the story that I told you on the background of my favorite toy from childhood, my memory of that. And then I also didn't expect it to turn blue when it dried. So that was very interesting. I don't know if that was a reaction with the gesso that I put down or if it is what that tea does, because I do know that red cabbage makes blue paper. And I know that green avocados make pink paper. So maybe there's some kind of a chemical reaction going on there. I went ahead and added some Tim Holtz, I believe these are the clippings stickers. I added some of those. I also added this hexagon here to help make the word imagination stand out a little bit more. And I may come back, and I think I probably will come back with something. Probably I have a moss green sparkly marker. Hold on, I'll just do that. So here's the marker. It is, let's see, it is a Spectrum Noir Sparkle, and the color is Olive Jade, but I have used it before. I don't know what it's going to do on this tea bag. We may be surprised again. But I am just going to draw around my word here, just to kind of give it a little emphasis to make it stand out. This marker is not really showing up on the hexagon, but it is showing up on the tea bag, which is really where I wanted it. A little sparkle is showing up on the hexagon. So there is that. And I'm probably gonna, let's see. Yep. I like that. All right. I like that. So I added the Tim Holtz clippings, Wordfetti, I don't know. It's one of his sticker books. And the words that I chose, because of the story or the definition of crambo, which was my unknown word that I tore out of the dictionary, the first definition was hence a repeated story or an old tale. And it just got me to thinking, because I had taken this part and this part from my fairy journal supplies, that it made me start thinking about fairy tales and how when I was younger, I had a vivid imagination. Otherwise, how would we have come up with rocks for people and pretending the stones in the pavings were houses and blah, blah, blah. So I took the words, all the wonderfully familiar fairy tales, and this was actually all the fairy tales, and I clipped that in half and put in wonderfully familiar. And over here, this is something that I strive to do. She tried to remember the secret of everyday things, imagination. And I think that that is the secret of not getting lost in the everyday, but remembering the secrets that are in each day, the imagination, the creativity, the memories, all the wonderfully familiar fairy tales. And then I added these numbers, because these were the numbers of the items on the sheet. And that way I can also keep track with each of these pieces which number they correspond to on the challenge. So I have my definition of my unknown word. I have a favorite toy from childhood story. And then I have my tea bag envelope, which I used in a couple of ways. I did the background, and then I used the tea bag itself as part of the collaging. I'm glad you joined me for this today. I am happy to be trying this. This is something new for me. I am a control freak. I like to know what I'm doing in advance, and this is a stretch. And in a way, this is helping me to remember the secret of everyday things, and that's imagination. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your likes and your comments. And if you don't mind subscribing to my channel, that would be fabulous too. And I just want to remind you, as always, to be kind. Bye.